Welcome to Between Two Pastries, a not-so-typical nutrition podcast. Nicole and Annie are licensed and registered dietitians. Join them as they discuss hot nutrition topics, challenge popular beliefs, and have a blast doing it. Here are your hosts, Nicole and Annie.
Welcome to Between Two Pastries. This is Nicole.
Hey everyone, it's Annie.
Today we have a lot of guests. This is so fun. So Annie and I thought it would be really, really cool to have a panel of amazing humans that have been so open and said yes to discussing the topic of body image. And since this is going to be kind of our January pod, we wanted to take a different approach to the typical January bashing that we do. Mm-hmm. And we thought, all right, let's just start it right off with let's just get to the core of really everybody's thing, I guess you could say, of why, we choose to do silly things, when it comes down to January. So at any rate, here we are. We are going to discuss body image today. Really looking forward to it. We're going to get really uncomfortable. It's going to be a little weird, but but we're hoping that everybody can relate and say, yes, me too, as we're kind of, trying to walk through this process together. So to kind of start things off, let's have everybody just kind of introduce themselves and, let us know who you are and how you know us and why you even said yes. And there were no bribes, we promise. There were zero bribes.
Brian, why don't you start?
Yeah, I'll start. So hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I am a client of Nicole's, and I also happen to be married to Annie. So that's my relationship with both of these two.
Why are you here? Are you here just because you're married to Annie?
Yes, because if I said no. I'm gonna I'm here because I have a probably decade plus long struggle of body image that both Nicole and Annie have helped me work through over the years. Looking forward to sharing my experience.
Thank you. And you've got very great haircut going on, and you literally have a unicorn on your sweatshirt, and that alone is amazing. Like, you really brought it today.
I try my best.
Yeah.
I can go. I'm Casey Hushin. Gosh, I was trying to remember how long I've known you, Annie. It's probably been almost 10 years now. Maybe not quite.
I posted something on Facebook for my first Glacial 50 run, trying to see if anyone wanted to room together in Sheboygan or something, wherever that would be. And that had to be...
So I was the one crazy enough to say yes.
Yes.
That was 8 years ago, maybe?
2012?
Yeah.
No, I think it was,
wow.
At least 10 years ago for sure. And I know Casey's like, I'll room with you.
So cool.
I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Yep. And we shared a room and we went to dinner at Texas Roadhouse.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
There was nothing else. And then went to the base and then started running together here and there.
Yeah. So we've run a lot of miles together. I got to be part of Annie's team when she did the Ice Age Trail. Attempts 1 and 2.
1 and 2.
And in that time also worked with Nicole when I was training for my second 50 miler. I would say my reason for being here is very similar to Brian. I think when I think of body image, it's the word that I keep coming back to is journey. It is such a journey with yourself and a journey with nutrition and knowledge. And I think that's relatable to a lot of people that I talk to that are runners and athletes. Maybe those habits don't start from the healthiest of places, right? To lose weight, to feel like you're going to be a better version of yourself. But at the end of the day, it's just been a lot of learning that I'm thankful to both of you for the help that you've been for me over the past decade.
Yeah, that's awesome, Casey. Thanks for being here.
Mhm.
You're such a cool person, by the way.
Thanks.
You are. You truly are.
My name's Noah. I have been a client with Nicole for 6 years, 7 years, something
At
like that,
least. At least.
2017. Um, and unlike Brian, I have not had a haircut in a while, much to my wife's chagrin. And yes, I do go into an office almost every day like this. So,
And they allow you. They allow you in.
they need me.
Mhm.
So, like Brian and Casey said, body image stuff has been, but it's been a part of my life for a long time. I would say that my self image of my body is something that affects every day of my life and has for a long time. Some days are better than others, but I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk to other people about their experiences and maybe say something relatable to anybody that might be listening.
And Noah, you have so many great stories in general about your process, you are such a brave soul, and I'm really proud of you on a lot of levels of how you have been moving through this for yourself and how you have, stood up for yourself with, say, the medical field, and how you have, whether you believe this or not, because we do argue around these things, but how you have supported yourself through this. Again, that relationship is,
It feels like it has been a long trudge forward.
Yeah.
But I was just talking about this with somebody yesterday. I used to describe it as stubbornness. I've moved to describing it as persistence, wanting to move forward and just continuing to do that, no matter the trudge.
Yeah, that's awesome. Absolutely. I'd sent out a list of questions that we thought, okay, let's just sort of use these as prompts. And I occasionally, no, I don't think you've ever seen these questions, neither Brian, actually. Sorry, guys. I don't know why I didn't share those with you.
I think you sent them to me.
They don't need them, no. But a lot of times I do send these to clients when we are kind of working with body image things, because it really does get people thinking about things on a little bit of a deeper level, and what body image really means to them. And then, where does everything kind of come from? Where did things kind of start for people? And sometimes through there, we find our own answers. So the first one is pretty general, but I think it just can open the door a little bit here of how would each of you describe your relationship with your body?
I'll start just because I want to get it out of the way. So I would say I think Noah just hit it pretty well. If I think about my own relationship with my body, it's a journey. I was somebody who after college, had gained a fair amount of weight, kind of, I guess not really unexpectedly, but like, it's one of those kind of the cliche that like one morning I woke up and I was like, how the hell did I gain 60 pounds in the last, half decade or however long it took? And so that was kind of like the eye opening. And then you partake in all sorts of healthy and unhealthy ways to try and lose that weight. And I was able to lose some weight. And, that unfortunately has a tendency to then spur a need to lose additional weight. And it's the classic, if I could just lose 5 more pounds, if I could just lose 10 more pounds, then everything would be great. And you kind of continue losing and continue losing and continue losing. And I got to a point, where both Nicole and Annie had kind of said, you've maybe swung a little bit too far. Which, truth be told, was hard for me to hear, because I was just getting to the point where I felt like, okay, this is where I want to be. And now the people that, are experts in this field, and the people that I'm paying, well, Nicole, obviously I was paying, to help work on this, and told me that I had gone too far. And like, it was a struggle to kind of put all that together and to accept that like, okay, maybe I liked the way that I looked, but it was also negatively impacting my running and just the way that I felt on a day-to-day basis and stuff like that. So, you kind of put your faith in your practitioners, and you say, okay, if that's what you think, if I am unhealthy, then I need to correct now back the other direction. And so, you gain a little bit of weight, and after you have gained weight and lost weight, gaining weight back feels extremely uncomfortable. And this has been over the last 4 or 5 years. I have gained some weight back that is, I would say generally healthy weight.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle, because the one half of your brain knows that, like, okay, like my running has gotten better, my endurance has gotten better, I'm more muscular, all of these sorts of things.
Mood.
My mood is better.
Mood.
But then the other side of your brain is saying, but you don't look like you used to look. And that's the struggle. And that honestly is why I continue to work with Nicole, and I continue to have these conversations over dinner with my wife and things like that, because it's not easy. It's not easy to accept what is true, but doesn't feel good. And so that's why, like Noah said, it's a journey, because I certainly am more comfortable with my body now than I probably have been in a very long time. But I'm also not fully comfortable with my body, if that makes sense. So it's still kind of a work in progress.
You want to say something, Annie? Otherwise.
No, I was just going to say thanks for sharing all of that, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's hard to share publicly.
Yes.
I think it's interesting because Annie and I talk about this a lot, but hearing you say, like, I don't look like I used to, even though you're still incredibly, like, you're perfect, and you're healthier, you feel better, like, but yet there's that distortion there, right? Of like, when you say, like, I don't look like I used to, what about you used to was considered better? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think, Nicole, one of the first times I met you, I had talked about like what my ideal body image, and you picture, this is like kind of a throwback of sorts, but if you picture like the cover of the Fight Club movie, where Brad Pitt is shirtless and he's smoking a cigarette and he's getting ready to get into a fight, and he's got like 3% body fat. Like, that's to me, that's what I wanted to look like, because to me, that's what looked healthy, was the absence of any body fat, and all that's left is muscle.
And that's a desired look, right? I mean,
right.
And we assume that that's perceived as the desired look. If I look this way, I will gain this people's
confidence,
love, confidence, all the things, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
But I can relate to what you're saying, Brian. I mean, I remember, Nicole, you might remember this as well, and Casey, I'm sure we've talked about this, but like that whole concept of, and this is how I deal with exactly what you're talking about. I used to look this way, but I remind myself, boy, I was a terrible human being. I was a shell of a person. I ran really great, but guess what? I was not, my longevity was not there. And now, you put on some weight and you quote unquote, get to a healthy weight perhaps, and you look different. You don't feel the same physically, but yet your brain is in such a different place that it makes it worthwhile, at least for me, that if my mood is improved, my brain is better, I can think, I'm not a shell of a person anymore, then you know what, the extra 10, 15 pounds or whatever it might be, it's probably worth it. And that constant reminder when you're feeling crappy about yourself. That is what has always helped me to be able to remember that piece.
Yeah. And from my perspective, again, like, that's part of you knows that that's accurate, right? But you think about, okay, like, I I have more endurance and things like that. You perform better in races, but you're racing 2, 3, 4 times a year. But I see myself 365 days a year without a shirt on. You know what I mean? So like that's where it gets hard sometimes, because the positive things that come from the weight gain are much less frequent than the negative things. You know what I mean? So like you said, it's a continual reminder that you have to do, and it's something that you really have to focus on. And I can say for myself, over the last couple of years, I have gotten much better at those reminders and that focus, and not needing to, go to Nicole 3 times a week, for 6 months to get that reminder, and to be able to, be a little bit more self-actualized in that sort of stuff.
Really good.
Well, I'm curious too, if Noah, if you have those same thoughts and feelings, because as male, and again, this is as males, Brian, you said something that a lot of males have said to me as patients in treatment, that I have to look at myself in the mirror with my shirt off. And that's very common among males, to really look at the physical, and females to, yes, look at the physical, but also be able to rationalize the other side of things. So I'm curious if Noah, you have felt that, or if that's just something that I've concocted in my brain and there's no evidence for it whatsoever.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I would say, as Brian was talking, I was trying to think back, to my experiences, and also to what I thought of as, or think of as an ideal, body. And I don't think I ever had like the concept of chiseled abs, or it's stuff like that in my head as something, I guess, that I expected or to be. I think I mostly just thought of skinny. It had little to do with muscle strength, and something I've had to work on a lot is sort of the space I take up. So I think I associated what I wanted in a body with taking up a smaller amount of space. I didn't want to take up space. I didn't really want to be seen. So for me, I think it was a lot more about just being skinny. So it didn't, I don't know if it mattered if I saw myself every day with my shirt off or not, but I had to live in that body every single day. I think I just kind of wanted to be, I don't know, not forgotten, but sort of just shuffle my way through life without drawing too much attention. So I definitely think there are some similarities with my experience and Brian's, with just some slightly different focus, because I've gone through some very large body changes back and forth and back over the last 30 years, and it kind of messes with your head, especially especially if you're thinking about the space you take up in the world, because it takes a long time for your brain to catch up to your body, no matter which direction you're going. If there's a large change, the brain has just been it feels like it's always struggling to adjust to where I am, and then also struggling with what it thinks I should be. And so there's a disconnect there as well. When I was, I don't know, like 5 or 6, I remember having a Polaroid taken at some sort of children's event of me. And I remember thinking at that age that I looked fat. And doesn't really matter whether I was or not, but that's a thought I had at that age, and then ended up being a fat kid through college mostly. In college, started to lose weight. Post college, really lost a lot of weight, a large percentage of my body, and there's definitely a running connection here between all of us. Got into the marathon and the ultra world, and lived in this sort of alien foreign body for a while, and then in 2017, I had done my second Ironman in 2016, and then in 2017, everything just sort of started reverting back to the body I had in high school, and so that's really what I've been dealing with for the last 6 years. Those changes. So yeah, it's interesting here, Brian, talking about having that really specific aesthetic, because now when I think about it, I don't know if I necessarily had that those thoughts. Not that I would have turned down that body if I had the opportunity.
A couple things with that, which was just interesting to hear you talk about that. I don't know if we've ever talked about that Polaroid, but even hearing you say that, as kids I don't know, we just absorb kind of everything. And that's when our like core belief system kind of even comes into play. And so, when you're sort of seeing an image of yourself and you're already like saying, I am fat, it's almost like you're just accepting and like manifesting, you know what I'm saying? Like
becomes an identity.
This is my identity. This is just what I do. Or who I am, right? Like it's a part of you. And sometimes then behavior can follow suit. I'm not saying that happened. I'm just saying that it's a curious, concept.
And I was just thinking about how my usage of the word fat has changed. As that 5-6-year-old, it's really unfortunate, but as that 5-6-year-old, that was a pejorative. It was a mean, bad word. It meant bad things when you said it, and to be fat was a bad thing. And how I use the word now is completely different. Now it's simply a body descriptor, like skinny. Some people are skinny, some people are fat, some people are, I don't know, straight sized. So the word doesn't hold the power for me that it used to, and hopefully anybody listening isn't offended when I use the word fat, because it's a pretty straightforward word to me now, and I actually wish that it would be used more often by people and in media and on TV and stuff like that, because it's too often used as a bad word. But as you were talking, I was just thinking about the difference between, because I sort of used two definitions of the word, and I was talking about how I thought as a kid and how I'm talking now.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting, and I agree about the sensitizing around certain words and whatnot, but to hear you think that was your definition, and so I'm also hearing you say though that you're kind of looking at yourself as a bad person, like I'm not, like it's almost like the I'm not enough starts happening, like there's something really flawed about who I am, right? Because of what that definition of, fat at the time for you was kind of carrying. And then it's interesting because, you had already mentioned too earlier in what you were kind of describing about taking up space. And you and I have worked a lot on that whole idea of and when we talk about taking up space, we're talking about it on an energetic level, not necessarily a physical level, right? It's just, and it can be a physical level. We can be as big energetically or physically as we desire, if that is where we just want to be, where we want to live. We have a right to whatever that is for us. So it's interesting when you're like, I want to take up as little space as possible. Again, I'm sort of talking outside of, not necessarily pinpointing it to you, but when I hear people kind of say that, Annie, you might see this in other people too. I think of like, the anorexic eating disorder, and I know I could speak from my personal experience with that, of I want to be as small as possible so I cannot get hurt, so I can be safe, so I am not seen, so I don't cause a problem, so I don't get yelled at, so people don't hate
we're
me.
matching the physical to our emotional.
Totally. So, I'm just sort of saying that, like, what is being small kind of mean to you, Noah, right? So, looking at it on that end, and then also seeing that there is a part of you, like you were talking about, and when we were talking before in regards to like your process, and even like when you lost your weight in the running world, and I mean, you were pretty restrictive, and like, yes, right, that wasn't a happy place in regards to.
Not most of the time.
But then you said, things started to shift for you. And that's where I'm kind of wondering, like, there comes a time in our lives where we're like, we realize like we're not really in alignment anymore. Like something is off. Something's off. Something's just not quite right. Yes, of course, because we're not in alignment. Where I feel like, there's that place inside of you that we talk about that is kind of like, I don't want to be small anymore. But it's not your size, it's your soul, it's your spirit. It's all the amazing stuff that you pack so like brown sugar. When it says packed brown sugar, you make sure it is so packed. You have so much amazingness inside of you. It is so beautiful to see. But I'd like for you to like throw it out there. But anyway, what I'm saying is that I think a lot of people have that, where they're like, oh gosh, there's these uncomfortable places, but why is that? It's because we're not letting ourselves shine. But we don't know how to do that and feel safe. We don't know how to do that and, not get hurt, right? It's all about not getting hurt on some levels. So
Casey, what about you?
Gosh, I feel like my story is kind of a mix of both Brian and Noah's. I would say if I was going to describe my relationship with my body, I think it's changed a lot over time. I think the first word I would use is like, it was something to be controlled. And now I feel like it really is a dear friend, like to me, like that transformation. And I don't have this moment of like, this is when it all changed. But I think Nicole's comment she just made about you have a time where it's like your soul doesn't match what you're doing to yourself. That after a while, it's like, I just want to be happy in my own skin. I grew up playing sports. I don't even have early memories about weight or, it was like, I was thinking back on these questions, like my basketball team, we would just eat as much pasta as you could physically cram into your body before every game, So like, I don't have early memories of like, what I looked like, I think I thought I was very thin then. And I like look back at some photos and I wasn't. I was like a very average size kid, but I don't have memories of it. Probably until I left college, I was like, Brian, I probably gained like 30, 40 pounds in college. And the day I left, I'm like, oh man, now I have to get employed and hold a job. And I think the culture of like the people you're around, like what you look like matters. You want to conform to that. So I started running I was not a like runner in high school other than up and down a basketball court. So like that was all new to me, but it was because I'm like, I really need to lose some weight. That's how I got started. And I think this is true for a lot of us, that when you start running, there's like this initial weight drop. You're like, wow, that's amazing. Well, if I just run twice as far, that is probably going to be twice as much, like the stuff that is not logical. And it's really easy once you start doing that to start hearing other people's poor nutrition advice. of, well, yeah. And then if you restrict calories, yeah, if you also do this and then add this on top of it, but don't change your diet, all, like all of those things that are so easy to hear around us that are bad science. They're not even science, just bad. That Annie and Nicole have spent years helping me debunk in my brain. But I do feel, and maybe it was more like 2020, there were no races. So I could not put my energy into that, where it was more like, how do I want to exercise so I feel good? How do I just, at the end of the day, like be happy and content in this body? That since then, I feel like I have way more fun. I'm way slower. I have way more fun doing half Ironmans and century rides and long runs that I'm heavier than I was then, and it doesn't even really bother me. I feel like the other thing in that I always found was when weight became the goal, it was just such a downward cycle. That's all the focus is. And like Annie said before about like that shell of yourself. Yes, I can look at a picture of myself from 8 years ago. Like, wow, she was really thin, but like all that she's worried about in her head at that time is I'm not thin enough. Or a number on a scale where now I wake up and I'm like, what do I want to do today so that I am a better version of myself?
It's such a good perspective. And I totally relate. You see that picture and it's, you were a shell of yourself. And like you said, all I could think about was the weight I was. And I remember there's a picture that I can think of that's actually on my parents' mantle that when I see it, I think to myself, I didn't eat anything that day.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
You know what I mean? Where I didn't feel for that, what I did there. And there's a big smile on it, but you're a shell of a person, and it's, no one else sees that. Everyone, and like you talked about, you get this terrible advice from people or whatever's on social media or especially in the running community. I mean, it's awful, the things you hear and see, and probably, certainly other sports as well, but it's, the truth. And it's really hard to rationalize that when people are saying you look so great or this or eat this or not that. And it really, really comes down to how do you, like you said, creating the best version of yourself. And when you're happy and when you're not happy.
Yeah. I think even in those moments though, you like, and Brian kind of alluded to this too. If I just get to here, I'm going to be happier. Like that is, your brain is lying to you. You are not going to be happier. You're not going to be a better version of yourself. And that's why I feel like it's really hard to trust your own brain sometimes, because you can be that ideal weight, you can reach that number, you're still not going to be happier. That is a really bad lie that your brain is telling you along the way.
How we end up with our brain telling us that's the part I would love for them to research, because
I know.
I would assume diet culture and just media in general and stuff is just shaping our brains. But from an early age, Noah, like you said, you see something in there probably sparked that. I mean, why else would a 5-year-old think that they look a certain way without having heard or, something in our lives to spark that? But I mean, to be adults and then still have this weird brain, I don't look the right way, but if I look this way, I'll feel better. I'll do better. I'll whatever better, And, Casey, like you were talking about, there's so many people in the athletic community who are pushing the opposite of feeling better, of being happy. I mean, I can think of, that whole concept of you have to be disciplined and going slow is not disciplined, and stuff like that. And it's like,
I was joking with my husband this morning. I'm like, on this podcast today, we're just going to talk about how we need to be more disciplined. Like that is like the worst.
Bad idea.
As I'm eating a cookie, walking out the door, like, come on, people, like feel good today about who you are.
Well, and that's just it. Two things. The first thing that you had mentioned that I think, again, is, we don't, when you think about like when you set intentions for the day, if people even set intentions for the day, like what kind of words are they using, right? And the one thing that you had said was fun.
Yeah.
You want to, you're having fun again. You're feeling joy again, and, people are not focused on that. Like, people a lot of times just don't take steps to like, how can I have more joy in my life today? How can I actually have more fun? So I loved hearing you say that. And then the other piece too, to what you guys were just talking about before, is that especially in the athletic world, it's like you win at all cost. You know what I mean? Like if that means I die, but I won, like that whole, or whatever. But there's a lot of truth to that. What part of you has to die, or what part of you do you think has to die in order for you to achieve this thing, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what people are like. It's the sacrifice, and like there's something about sacrifice that makes you better, and you know what I mean? Like that's just one mentality, but it's so true. And then you completely lose yourself.
I just wanted to add that one thing that took me a long time to realize was that losing weight didn't solve any problems.
Right.
And I mean, that's basically what everyone is saying here. But that took a long time. It took a long time to realize that, like, this didn't solve my problems. And sure, it made some things easier, but some things are going to be easier and some things are going to be harder when your body changes. So getting over that, and maybe in some ways that was actually disappointing. Like this didn't work. But it really was a realization sort of afterwards. It was a realization once I started gaining weight back that the losing weight didn't ultimately solve anything. And for me, the athletic performance was sort of a side effect of the losing weight. So I wasn't so focused on that as like a mental intention. I think I wanted things to be better, which is why I started losing weight. And some things were, but my depression didn't go away. Does exercise help depression? For sure. But it didn't go away. I wasn't cured. It didn't dissolve all of my negative thoughts about myself. I just found new ones. Sometimes I wish I was skinnier again, but trying to deal with things as they are now, because now I have the lesson that just losing weight isn't going to solve the problem.
You were talking too about doing certain things, and I forgot the exact comment that you made, Noah. But I think that ultimately it still comes down to that. It's like we're so narrow-minded sometimes in how we think. This isn't about you, Noah. This is a general statement about how we think things should be. So like, Noah, when you were talking about like you said some things were easier, and or I'm sorry, something about how you functioned, right? Where we have such a difficult time just adjusting. Like, I am, taking up more space, or I'm taking up less space. Like whether you're taking up more space or less space, you still have an adjustment to make. There's still a balance, right? When you're doing things or how you do things, and it's not good or bad. It's just simply an adjustment. And I think that people really struggle with that. It's kind of going back to, I can't do things like I used to in my 20s. We just did a pod on that not that long ago, Annie, right? Where it's like, well, of course, how can you?
You're not in your
60
20s.
years old. I mean, I don't know why we have this expectation. So, but there's something that is, and I don't know if it's ego-based for people. I don't know if it's pride, which is similar to ego, but it's kind of like, why is it that people have just such a hard time just adjusting to something?
Nicole, if I can chime in really quick, as someone who over the last however many months. And by the time this pod gets released, there'll be a baby present. But as someone who's put on 20 pounds at this point, and Brian can attest to this too. He's heard it. And also, I bitch about it too, but like, I had no thought whatsoever. You start this process and you're like, okay, gonna start gaining weight. All right, fine. And I was fine with it. And then people come up to you and it's, well, I gained 80 pounds. I gained 50. Oh, my friend gained all this. And but you look too small. And now you look too big. And it's like, I didn't ask anyone about my appearance. I didn't ask for anyone to talk about I'm not like, you just kind of, there came moments where you're just like in shock that people bring this up to you without you saying like, well, what do you think about my weight or this weight? And I don't know if I've talked about this before, but it puts you kind of between a rock and a hard place in the sense of like, am I okay? Am I not? Like you start to question yourself. And as a professional who works with people every day on body image and takes pride in where their body is at whatever stage, it was almost as if people put you in this lock of, this is what you should feel.
Yes.
And that has been a very interesting thing to experience, having a good mindset about body image. And then now being told you're too small, you're too big. I was big. You're going to be big. This is, all of these shoulds and coulds. And it's just been really interesting in that regard. And I don't know, Brian, if you have a comment on that.
Well, I don't know if anybody in our little panel here has seen the Barbie movie, but the little rant that America Ferrera goes on at the end of the movie,
of course,
like Annie and I were just talking about this a couple weeks ago, because this is a topic that has come up several times, where it's like, if you gain 50 pounds while you're pregnant, oh, that's too much. If you gain 25 pounds, oh, that's not enough. People don't have any idea what the actual number is, so they're just looking at you, and it's like, give me the exact look and number that you're going to say, oh, Annie, you're right on track. Like you have gained 28.64 pounds and your belly is now X inches or, whatever it's so ridiculous. And I think we all are subjected to it in various ways.
This is just current for me.
Yeah.
But this is how I think we end up with such terrible body image thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, because and I really think, not to get too ethereal about it, but it's a very weird American mindset that no matter what you're doing, I'm going to tell you that you should be doing something different. If you're driving too fast, you need to drive slower. If you're driving too slow, you need to drive faster. If you're running, you need to stop running because it's bad for your knees. If you're not running, you need to start running because it's unhealthy to not exercise. No matter what you're doing, it's not right. And I don't know what the behavioral science behind this is. I know you've talked about media and advertising and all that sort of thing, where we're all just so conditioned to whatever I'm doing, I need to do something else so that whatever that something else is gets me out to a store to spend money, to feed the machine, to keep the advertisers running and to keep the capitalism running and to do all of the things. And we're all so wired into it that whether it's weight or any million of work or school or whatever, no matter what you're doing, it's not the right thing to be doing, and you should be doing something else. And everybody is going to tell you what you should be doing, and they're all going to tell you something different, and it's garbage. And it's so frustrating.
I think that's why body image becomes such a thing, is it's the outward expression to the world of who we are. So then when people do have judgment on it or have an opinion of what you should do, shouldn't do, we take that and put it all inside ourselves. of what other people are saying. I think, and sometimes the saying isn't a family member or, someone close or someone walked down the street telling Annie, wow, you need to lose 3.8 pounds to be exactly where you are supposed to be. But it's the media that we consume. It's the magazines we read. It's the social posts, whatever it is. But that to me is always what we're showing to the world, to other people, is the manifestation of who we are. And that's what makes it so hard.
Yeah.
It's a good point. No, but it's just very interesting because I'm hearing everyone speak, and it's one of those things where you can really see how much the external world impacts our patterns of how we feel about ourselves, and it's really, really hard for people to rise above that because we believe what our family and our friends,
absolutely, and even reason in a lot of cases,
what they say. We want, like, so if someone says you're right or you're wrong, it's like, oh, okay, then that's what it is. And that's where I think so many people, it's like that, fishing line and lure sort of thing where they get caught and people are reeled into this total world of diet culture and gross body image and thinking that they're not good enough. And when we sit with those thoughts for a long period of time, long enough, we start to believe it. It becomes who we are. It becomes our identity. And that's hard for anyone and children in particular. And we see it a lot. But when you get those thoughts and feelings in childhood and they carry on into adulthood, it's very, very hard to change. I mean, we're changing patterns, and that's tough.
This has been awesome, by the way. And I thought that I'd be really curious. I mean, there's so many of these other questions. I feel like this could go on for at least another hour. This has been so incredible. But I'm wondering if each of you could take the question of, and I might combine a little bit here, but if your body could talk to you as your best friend right now, what would it say?
I'm not going first on this one.
Oh gosh, I need a minute. Noah, we're nominating you.
Yeah, Noah's got.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe lay off, dude. We sometimes I feel like my body and I are maybe more like roommates than best friends.
Cool.
Trying to cohabitate, exist together. Both pay the rent. This is a hard one because I'm not very kind to my body, and I struggle to even be objective about this. It really feels like a blind spot. I know it's there. I know the blind spot is there. I feel like I could say the things like my body just wants me to respect it and know that it's here and it supports me and stuff like that. But that's just so disconnected from my reality that I can say the words, but it's really hard to accept that as a truth. So it almost feels dishonest saying it. But I think what has worked the best for me with my relationship is, like I said, at this point, to maybe think of it more as a roommate than a best friend. We don't always have to get along, but we have to cohabitate and we have to survive together.
A good analogy. I like that.
I think mine would maybe say, kind of in the same vein, mine would say something like, I've got this. Like, my body is doing what it should be doing. And it just needs me, my brain, however you want to look at it, to stay the hell out of the way. Well, I mean, like, honestly, that's what it is, right? Like, everything is functioning how it should be functioning. And it's just my own insecurity and fear and things like that are leading me to, to try and manipulate it and to try and force it to do things it doesn't want to do.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that would be probably mine.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say thanks for letting me do my thing, like giving it space to do what it's supposed to do, not what I want to like force it into doing.
It's a tough question.
Yeah, that is hard.
Because I don't think we think of it that way. You know what I mean? We don't relate to our bodies in that way because we're not conditioned to, right? So
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a really challenging question. We don't have to answer that, do we, Nicole?
You guys just get to ask the question.
We're off the hook on that one. But I like all of your answers. Those are great.
Yes, your answers are fantastic.
Those are my answers.
I'd say the same thing.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I know it's a really, really, really hard one. My body and I have been through a lot together, a lot. And I honestly think that if I kind of sit here and even look in, the first things that are coming to my mind is that my body is saying like, you haven't always been the nicest to me. And I appreciate that you've come around, kind of a thing. Yeah, it is really a tough one.
It's almost like you start to feel, when you're asked that question, you start to there's like a level of guilt you kind of start to feel, because
yeah, absolutely.
Perhaps there's been some body abuse and stuff like that. And so you really want to say, I'm sorry, or, please stay functioning forever, because, like there's some of that in there as well, that you want to have that conversation with your body, because, and again, I think people do know when there's some of that body abuse going on, that awareness, it might be pushed down really, really far, that awareness, but I do think people are aware, and it's really just tough for so many people to stop the behaviors that they might be using, or the beliefs or whatever, but there is some knowledge there, because our body does tell us, that we're, that it's being abused. It tells us in a lot of different ways.
Hands down. Yeah. Hands down. It's a matter if we're just going to ignore it and just, stay in our head versus, be in our body and working with it. Absolutely.
Right. That's tough.
It is really tough. It is really tough. Any final words for our listeners?
I would just like to say we opened the podcast talking about Noah's lack of a recent haircut. And seeing him on screen because this is not a video format for the listeners. Noah, you have a real Jason Momoa thing going on.
Oh yes,
I
you
keep seeing it over and over and over, and it's
totally agree.
Man, that is like, you are a dead ringer. I love it.
That is awesome.
So you're hearing Noah talk, but picture Jason Momoa, and that's exactly
100%.
what's going on here.
That is such a good call, Brian. That's awesome.
Brian was going to say
he's going to hear this like a week and a half ago. I needed a Halloween costume.
Next year.
I thought Brian was going to say, after seeing your hair, Noah, he's growing his out.
Yeah, that's it.
We did that during the pandemic. I can't go back to
that. That little ponytail. Any other thoughts?
Yeah.
That was not where I thought this was headed. So
right.
That was an interesting turn.
If we're circling back, I'll circle back to what Casey said about, this being a journey. There's not an end point here. There's not a finish line. This it's just about how we're treating ourselves, how we're living our lives. What do we want to make of it? How does our body fit into that? I have so much more work to do. Can't say I'm looking forward to all of it, but I'm hoping to get to a point where, I just want to be okay. And that's what I'm moving towards, and, trudging a little closer every day.
All I was going to say is thanks to Nicole and Annie. I feel like you guys have been such important voices for me on this. And I love, I just, always come back to a lot of things that I've learned from you, and just how much more important our bodies are than a number on a scale, or what someone else thinks when we're walking down the street. Like, we're worth more than that. So I appreciate your approach, and all the things that I've learned from you.
Thanks, Casey.
Awesome, Casey.
You were willing to jump in, though. That was all three of you willing to jump in feet first. So it makes a difference.
The sad reality of everything is that I know you both have been, both personally and professionally subjected to negativity over the last decade plus from, people that have strong opinions and disagree with what you're doing. And it's so easy to fixate on the one person who says, you guys don't know what you're talking about, or the one Facebook comment or whatever, but there are, you've got 3 people here that are miles and miles and miles ahead of where they would have been without you two, and countless other clients between the 2 of you. And that's, again, you talk about societal things, right? Like, you hear the one bad, but you don't hear the 500 positive. So I hope everybody else that's listening understands like how important people like Nicole and Annie are to my journey, to Casey's journey, to Noah's journey, and to God knows how many other people as well. So thank you both for the work that you do, even in the face sometimes of some criticism that feels very, pointed and crappy, honestly. So keep it up, because the world needs people like you guys to fight through these things.
For sure.
Jeez.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you to you all too.
Yeah, no
really
kidding.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Especially for being vulnerable and opening up on this, because it's not easy. Not easy. And hopefully we can have you back at some point and do this again, because we got through
one question.
One question.
Well, 2, technically 2.
Okay, fine.
Right?
Yes.
2. Okay, we're
Out
going
of what, 10?
8.
So, might be a few sessions, but we'll get through them all.
Yeah, no, it's probably worth it, actually. Yeah. Final thoughts, Annie?
Nope, I think I said all my thoughts. No, we're just really appreciative for all of you to be here, and glad, you talk about it being a journey, and it's a different journey for the practitioner, right? Like we get to see the journey through a different lens. We don't have to necessarily feel it all the time, of what other people are going through, but we see it, and it's amazing to watch where people start and where they end up. And people usually think they've only moved a little sliver, but we see a completely different perspective. And people, like, you guys have moved mountains with where you've moved towards, even though it may not feel that way. So and you see it through comments that might be made or not made anymore. You see it through shoulder position, that confidence level, speech, all of these things where we see these things happening and change happening. So it really, really is a journey. I love that you guys all brought that up and talked about that, because body image isn't just okay, today I'm going to feel good about myself. Like, it's not just a flip of a switch. It really, really takes a lot of time, and a lot more than just a 30-day something. It takes a lot of time, and doesn't always necessarily heal itself. It oftentimes remains an open wound, and sometimes there's salt that goes on the wound, and sometimes it's bandaged and with a pretty bow, and we're feeling really great. And it just kind of varies, depending on what kind of space we're in. So I appreciate that conversation about being a journey.
If we can, leave audiences with anything, hopefully you are all able to answer these questions for yourselves too. And we'd love to hear your stories. So by all means, please contact us in some way and let us know what you thought of things. And I just really want people to know how much their body loves them, and that it's just wanting you to love it back and support it back as much as possible. So it hurts my heart when I hear people talk about how their body betrayed them. And to me, it's like your body's always there for you, always there for you, always there to support you. And if it has something to say and you don't like it, sometimes you just got to listen in to what that is trying to tell you, whether it's slow down, pay attention to something, nurture it more, give it a break. I just hope people are willing to listen. So, all right. Thank you all so much for joining us. And I hope everybody has a really, really great, positive, super awesome, non-diet culture January. Thanks, everyone.
Have questions you want to hear discussed on the show? Find us on Facebook or visit between2pastries.com and drop us a line. Want to support the show? Find us on Patreon for exclusive content. If you love the show, find us on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a review.